Good evening, Valeriy Viktorovich. Good evening, dear viewers, listeners and guests in the studio. Today is June 21st, 2021. Surely the most popular question is connected with the meeting of Putin and Biden in Geneva. The question itself sounds like this. During the press conference of Putin in Geneva, the level of questions addressed to him has shown how little journalists understand the current political situation in the world, as well as the goals of this meeting. But from my point of view, writes Aleksandr from Donetsk People Republic, the most interesting question was the last one, from the Radio Canada's journalist. The question from her child, which let Putin describe the necessity and importance of this meeting. Is that true?
Well, true and not true at the same time. Of course, this question helped Putin to describe the necessity of this meeting, but he didn't reveal the meaning of it. Here we should point out the following thing. Not only journalists don't understand the essence of this meeting, but political experts don't understand it either. When they started debating about who won and who lost, this or that, when they insisted that it couldn't be raised in the essence of who lost and who won, that both of them, Putin and Biden, had won. All these discussions don't have a ground under them, if we understand the concept of this meeting. Reasoning of why Biden won or lost is based on the position announced by Time, that Putin had been given a floor that was a failure in itself. And this failure, when Putin had been given a floor, is based on what did they catch? The thing is that there is a monkey paw effect in the Western civilization, when profits are heavily offset by accompanying expenses. And these expenses were noticed by many, but gain profit isn't evaluated yet. And in this regard, it is necessary to review what really happened, which goals Russia had and which goals the USA had, and what has been reached. First of all, we should point out that the US and Russia don't In general, this meeting served the goals set by the US and Russia, Putin, with no compromise. But talking about who won or whether both of them won is showing complete non-understanding of the essence of this meeting. And we are going to talk about it now. But before we start talking about it, I should remark on the absolute rational anxiety of all people who feared that the Russian Gosudar might have been assassinated or liquidated by some other means in the West. The whole earth became witnesses of at least one prevention of assassination attempt on Putin. The main question is whether they have seen it or not. There is a movie, Teheran 43, where they narrate about attempts to range an attack on leaders of the Big Three by the Hitler's intelligence service. One of their ways was to kill leaders, or at least Stalin, during a press conference when they faced the media. They had worked it out, this and that, but realized it had little chance to be accomplished. Yes, if you arrange such a meeting and meet security requirements for the top officials, the variant of assassination attempt on a leader during a press conference has absolutely no prospect. Another thing would be if someone created a mess during this press conference or while preparing it. Pay attention to the fact that American intelligence service arranged a press arrival before the beginning of this meeting. According to all the rules, first you need to dispose the accredited journalists and let the mess calm down. Intelligence service should attend to each participant individually. And then, only then, leaders should ritually appear in front of the press, sit down on chairs next to their tables, send ritual greetings before getting down to business. What was going on in that situation? First, Putin and Biden arrived, then all the American security service who controlled the process started letting in the press. A huge mess was created. A welter during which some American journalists were let in, though they hadn't been accredited, meaning they were ignoring the official protocol. And while all this pandemonium was lasting, the presidents were sitting and waiting. There was a great opportunity to make a terror act against Putin. It doesn't mean that one of the journalists could do it, no. This mess was for the purpose of distracting attention. Why did they need those journalists who hadn't been accredited for this event? Specifically for video shooting of the meeting's beginning? To show we captured the defects. Look, he hasn't been planned, but he was let in by intelligence service representatives. That is why it happened. All this mess was needed by someone who could have seized the moment to make gunshots and then disappear in the crowd. But it didn't happen. The work of the intelligence service in Tehran in 1943, just like the work of them here, was on top, and Gosudar was protected to the fullest. The fact that this mess was arranged by the American intelligence service, especially for the purpose of creating conditions of Putin's assassination attempt, is obvious. There cannot be such an ignoring of the security protocol, deliberately worked out for ages. Protocols are not changed like that. Everything was done to create this welter, to have non-accounted people against the protocol, whose presence could have been explained later. They would have closed everything and explained, look, there are certain defects made by specific employees. They let in an unknown terrorist. But our intelligence service didn't allow this situation to develop. Almost everyone saw it, but did they understand it? I will repeat that this is the other question. So we need to understand there was a try to make an assassination attempt on Putin. But the main actor didn't turn out. Everybody worked as planned, making noise, making this welter. But that one who had to make the shooting wasn't there. That's all. That's the fact. So, this meeting of Putin and Biden is relative to the meeting of the Big Three in Teheran in 1943, not only in terms of assassination attempt, but also in terms of the meaning of this meeting. It is truly similar to the Teheran 43 meeting. What was the essence of the meeting in Teheran? The World War was lasting. How could those countries which had raised Hitler and which had to be his allies and his rear become partners with the Soviet Union, which had to destroy Hitler? They didn't realize how Stalin had overplayed them. Moreover, a Land-Lease was already in place, but the West was still wondering, which partner are we dealing with? What didn't we understand in the Soviet state? What didn't we understand about the Soviet leader? What will happen and in which way? We need to discuss, we need to talk. Otherwise, where could they move further? After the Battle of Stalingrad, the Third Reich's end became obvious. That was why King George VI gave the sword as a gift to citizens of Stalingrad, symbolizing the ability to distinguish things. We realized who you are, but now we need to make up our minds about what's going to happen, in which direction our sword will be used. Specifically, to define parameters of action of the Soviet state, which in fact suddenly became a subject in the process of globalization, meaning it started to carry out its own global politics. Here the globalists and the Western country elite raised the question, what should we do? How should we maneuver? If we start supporting the Soviet Union, what will we get in response? They had to figure out each other's principal positions and terms. They had to understand how the Soviet Union saw the future, how that future correlated with the vision of the future by the United Kingdom, the US, and the whole so-called democratic Western world. That's why they had to meet Stalin, and they did it. Stalin traveled not a lot, but he went to Tehran in 1943 and to Berlin in 1945, because there were principally essential things behind these trips. Yes, we could keep delaying the meeting of Putin and Biden. We could. Every day during which we delayed this meeting worked against the US, and it worked for strengthening the state sovereignty of Russia. Just like in 1943, Stalin could be procrastinating, but it could result in a change of the political situation, making it less beneficial for Russia. If, as a result of balancing external and internal events, the situation shows that the meeting should be held, our partners want this meeting, then it should be held. It was like that in 1943. It was like that in 2021. If you can't delay it, then you should deal with it. If it is needed, the meeting should be held. It is necessary to dot the I's and cross the T's. To gain their goals, to dictate their will to Russia, the American side, the country elites, trained all the US lackeys inside Russia. Look at what started to happen with the so-called coronavirus. What a mess began. Look at all the other directions. Each US lackey has started training in the direction he can. They had to create the maximum weak position of Putin to make him negotiable, attentive to what the US tells him. The meeting, which the Americans were planning, was to take place in the same format as the meeting between the Swiss president and the President of the United States had been carried out. According to their idea, it was Putin who had to wait for Biden until the master would benevolently come out. Here's a sensitive hint for those who can read the signs. Notice that the Swiss president suddenly, on a proactive basis, practically in violation of the protocol, declared that he was ready to meet with Putin. Such a meeting was organized, and the Swiss president turned out to be a layer between Biden and Putin. He stood waiting for Biden to come, so the American team's plan didn't work. Moreover, as a result, they suffered great damage in relations with European countries. One more time, the American side showed its true attitude towards Europe. Before the meeting with Putin, Biden assembled NATO countries in order to unite everyone, negotiate and make concessions. Does Europe have enough gas? Has Europe great demand for huge quantities of coal? Here you are. Everything will be fine with Nord Stream 2, and we shall come to an agreement. And suddenly this manifestation. The president of the country, not just a random one, but Switzerland. After all, even Hitler was afraid to conquer Switzerland. Is forced to stand in the sun and wait until the benevolent master show up. Well, acting from a position of strength, showing themselves as benevolent masters is a sign of stupidity. A clever person envisages the consequences. The United States is in for the consequences, as nobody forgives such insults. They planned to hold such a meeting in order to show Russia its place for all kind of American lackeys here in Russia's administration, like the Sobyanyins, Kotyukovs and other bastards, who are now insisting on the carrying out of compulsory vaccination. Did you pay attention to who speaks about compulsory vaccination? Those who distinguished themselves in the genocide of Russian people in the 1990s, a real genocide. If some of them had not taken part in this genocide, it was because at that time they were in their green years, but they belonged to those clans who committed genocide. Can you believe that they calling for obligate vaccination witnesses, that in reality they do not care whether people will be vaccinated or not. It is important for them to break people's will, to break them down psychologically. That is why one of them, Sobyanin, says, "We do not care if the vaccine works or not, and if reinfection may still happen after vaccination. We will force you to get vaccinated." As simple as to force. Do they have legal rights for that? He is trying to implement fascism. He has conceived to organize a fascist concentration camp, same as Kotyukov and many others who fit into this campaign. They think that they are working to weaken Putin's position. However, it doesn't occur to them that they create conditions for themselves to be destroyed. They work for that on their own. This is because complex social supersystems are governed differently. If things were so simple for the Americans, they wouldn't have to meet with Putin. However, they needed to decide what to do with Russia, which suddenly became a subject of global politics again. Have you noticed the American press attack on Biden? They couldn't understand anything. How many times they asked Putin about carrying out a predictable policy? After all, what was the issue of this meeting? It was about Russia's predictability. What is behind it? A thing that nobody noticed. I would remember an episode when a representative of the United States to the UN, Samantha Powers, raised her voice against Vitaly Ivanovich Churkin. You are a losing country. Why do you allow yourself to behave like a sovereign country in the international arena? For Americans, this is a big issue. The current political elite grew up in the situation when each word whispered in Washington was considered to be a strict order by every representative of American lackeys in power bodies of Russia. They were kneeling, kissing their master's shoes, and licking their master everywhere, saying, "Oh, master, we will do whatever you wish. We will destroy Russian people. We shall give you all the country's resources. Anything you wish, just ask. Whatever, just ask." Americans looked at it, saw how many obedient people were in Russia. All of their lackeys were in administration of Russia, and were reassured that everything was going to be in line with their orders that they sent from the United States. Their lackeys in Russia seem to follow the United States instructions. However, it happens that things work in a completely different way. Putin's hands seem to be tied, so that he wouldn't even move a finger. Tied with the stuff like pension reforms, the coronavirus, and so on. However, another maneuver makes the situation of the American lackeys even worse, and Russia is progressively gaining its state sovereignty. Russia already acts as a subject of global politics. We are not an object anymore when anybody was robbing us as a country. We have become a subject on the international arena. How did this happen? Why are they not able to plan in the United States? It seems for them that their plan is good, but Russia behaves unpredictably. It really does. All their lackeys help those from abroad, as well as those sitting in Russia's office, let alone in non-government organizations like that of Navalny. Why doesn't it work? Why does Russia still exist? For them it seems that they foresaw everything. Still it fails. After all, even Navalny's affair was not predictable. If in the 1990s one received a mandate, a right for reign, as they say, from Washington, he could do whatever he wanted, and he was beyond the reach of the court. Suddenly, for whatever reason, Navalny, who was assured, "You are our boy. That is it, and nobody will touch you," bang, ends up with a criminal record, being convicted for a specific crime. That is, you can do whatever you want, and no one will touch you, and a conviction for a specific case. Okay, they won't put you in jail, don't worry. He was not put in jail. However, out of the blue, the second conviction follows. Don't worry, they won't dare to imprison you. They didn't imprison you for your previous conviction. Again, he wasn't put in jail. And then a sudden imprisonment. What kind of predictability is it? They encroach on the one that is under our protection. In the 90s, it was not permissible. In the 0 years, it was impossible either. Why all of a sudden they infringe our right of patronage? How come? Why do they allow themselves to do this? Why are they able to do it? Who does it? We once drove into the court parking and parked where we wanted, and the other time they told us look for a parking place in the proximity. Why doesn't it work? This is unpredictable for them. This is incomprehensible to them. For them, it must be the rule of thumb that whenever they say a command, Russia must obediently fulfill the order. Then an idea comes across to them. I should draw attention to one fact here. Of course, Biden had a huge number of problems with the way he carried out his election campaign. He messed up a lot. However, what are the causes for his mistakes? They are because of his age. Well, the old man is not in a great physical condition. I mean, he could have been better for his age, not that he is not up to physical exertion. Moreover, the election campaign by American standards requires tremendous effort, and even for those sitting in a bunker, it is still demanding, especially under the coronavirus hysteria, etc. Therefore, a person in a normal situation can speculate calmly and sensibly, reflect on things from different angles, but only when there is no rush. One can make a certain type of mistake, say confuse his wife with his sister. Well, he turned in the wrong direction, expecting to find his wife there, but her sister turned out to be there instead. It is clear that he is under pressure. However, if you free him from tension from all these minor issues, he is quite a sensible political leader. He is one of those rare people who have practically disappeared from the American elite. For example, Kissinger, who is already 98 years old, is still in the ranks. The main thing is that he thinks clearly, and the conditions under which we shall listen to his thoughts are irrelevant. The point is that American political culture doesn't allow us to hear what a person means to say. Moreover, Biden's physical condition just prevents him from conducting proactive policy in such a surrounding. Why I'm saying this? In 2011, Biden came to Russia and said to Putin, "Well, you goof, get out. We have our boyfriend Dimon. We bet on him. We decided to make him president." Then, oops, Putin ran elections anyway and won. Even Bolotnaya protests organized by the United States couldn't save the situation, even though Rushkin, a downright American lackey, brought the Communist Party there, and everyone ran to join them, inclusive Fair Russia Party. By the way, Fair Russia is again threatening by organizing a Maidan protest under this graphomanic Prilepin, a so-called new Russian genius of writing. Here is the answer to the question why they have brought him into politics. He must organize a social explosion. He needs a Maidan. Back to Biden. He has already communicated with Putin once. He got some experience of communicating with him. He went through a certain situation with him, an unpredictable situation. Any experience matters, especially a negative one, as it works for future positive solutions. That is, if Biden, having such experience, talks to Putin again, but in different circumstances, then he will be able to figure out what this military secret, as Gaidar put it in his fairy tale, is about, what its essence is. To fully understand this unpredictability of Russia, to clarify, why is unpredictable Russia scary? There was superpower number one, everyone was afraid of it. Remember an episode of signing the treaty by Brezhnev and Nixon? Nixon constantly peeped into Brezhnev's document while signing. Brezhnev wrote a letter of his signature, and then Nixon wrote a letter of his signature. Brezhnev wrote another letter, then Nixon wrote another one after him. They were afraid. They were scared of the Soviet Union. Somehow, in the country with which the United States could do nothing, I mean nothing, a group of people suddenly appears at power, and its leaders run to the West saying, "We want to be slaves to the bourgeois. Take us. For allowing us to be your slaves, we will pass to your possession the entire Russia with its riches and people." The West answered them, "We don't need people." "Well, master, we will destroy them, just take us as slaves." Presently, the head of such a powerful group, dreaming to become a slave to the Americans, is Voloshin, who absolutely cannot imagine how to live without being American servants. Those with him are many. Everyone tries to join him. Deripaska is in his group. It takes long to list them. Generally, Voloshin symbolizes this group now. He cannot live without serving the Americans. Serving them is the essence of his life. No Americans? Why live then? Whom shall I serve? I do not need another master. This is America, after all. It is everything. Americans were observing what was going on when, bang, there was a superpower where people decided to abandon sovereignty. They denied their greatness and their power in order to become beggars and humbly crawl on their bellies. Where is the predictability here? Try to find at least one American billionaire or just a business person who would simply give up their independence. However, in Russia, in the Soviet Union, there was a whole nomenclature group in power, the so-called elite, which destroyed the country with their own hands for the sake of satisfying their passionate desire to become slaves to the Americans, a desperate one. This passionate desire was burning them out. Unpredictability. However, this kind of unpredictability is good for the West. Russia gave up to the USA, and in the 1990s, the Americans controlled everything inside Russia and did whatever they wanted there. Putin comes. A bell is ringing here, another one is ringing there. An unpredictable episode happens, then another one. Even when they put their boy Dimon, People often ask, why hasn't Saakashvili been put on the wanted list? How can one put Saakashvili on the wanted list if he will immediately surrender his accomplice during interrogation? The sidekick of this crime, Dimon, the US resident in Russia, Medvedev, he will turn him in immediately without even blinking an eye, because if he didn't get guarantees from Medvedev that there would be no response from Russia and they would be able to destroy all South Ossetia, then Saakashvili would have never attacked South Ossetia. Unexpectedly, Putin turned up and the response to attack occurred. Everything seemed to be under control. Everything should have happened according to the plan. Sarkozy cried and begged Putin, "Please wait at least another day. What do you need? You are the prime minister. Responsibility for Russia is on Medvedev, and you seem to be out of picture. Why do you interfere?" His pleading didn't work out. The situation was getting more and more beyond control. At first, they brushed it off. One bell, another bell, the third one. Russia is gradually reshaping, gaining its sovereignty again. Russia was gathering forces. They thought that we were on our knees, and we, as they say, were just trying ankle boots. Suddenly, at the Munich conference in 2007, Putin said, "Guys, we are not satisfied with this situation when you are the chief executives in the world. We have our own vision of the world." What was the response from the Americans? The louse that growled. Well, what kind of prevision can Russia talk about according to the Americans? Allows itself to grow. What is going on? Just pin it down. Did they manage to pin down? No, they didn't. One thing led to another. It seemed that Putin was removed from the political scene in 2008. He was not the president, he was the prime minister. Nevertheless, the planned operation failed. Then everything went even worse. One failure followed another one. They need to urgently find out how predictable Russia is. That is why they put questions about it and insisted on Russia's predictable policy. Still, Russia remains unpredictable. Putin says, "What do you call unpredictable?" We are predictable. Russian state reacts to the degree of outer pressure accordingly.